Zoe. Happy Monday. Happy Women's Day. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Julie Dana. I'm the practice manager and head of the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery. Really wonderful to see you all here today. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Understanding Risk community. The Understanding Risk community, for those of you who may not know it, is a large community of about 10,000 experts and practitioners representing 180 countries around the world, working to build and create a more resilient world. The Understanding Risk community is actively dedicated to creating opportunities for women to contribute to the disaster risk management agenda. And we're here today to hear some stories from some of the women who are, believe me, very, very actively contributing to that agenda. Thank you so much for taking time to spend this hour with us. My job is basically to welcome you and to begin to introduce our speakers. This is a celebration of talent, a celebration of expertise, a celebration of resilience, a celebration of passion, and a celebration of really the fantastic community we have for those of us working on disaster risk management, resilience, climate change around the bank. So welcome. Thanks very much for being here. And our first speaker is Ms. Anna Wellenstein, Director of the Sustainable Development Group for the Latin American and Caribbean region. Anna.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks to all of you for the chance to be here and introduce this fantastic group. So it's more of a pleasure for me to do it. I think they've been doing amazing work. My job is only to welcome and sort of tee it up. So first of all, I want to recognize the great work they're doing. They're helping to reduce the risks that our client countries face and the people in those countries face of disasters. They help us respond when things don't go so well, and they also help restore those communities. And they're all fundamental roles to development in general, and much less sustainable development. So when you typically think of disaster risk management, maybe not this group because they look super educated on the topic, but when you think about the typical bank staff and they think about disaster risk management, they have in mind what some of our colleagues are: firefighters, running in, able to throw the people at risk over their shoulder and haul them out. Well, and the fact of the matter is that a lot of the people that are doing the work aren't those people, that typical image you have in mind. So I think back to some of the earlier pioneers. So people like Alcira Crema, who was the manager for our first disaster risk management unit in the bank. I think of people like Tova Solo or Sofia Bentancur, who really helped launch the whole view of disaster risk and adaptation. I had the pleasure of seeing some of it myself in 2004. That dates me. I was the sector leader for Mexico and Colombia, and at the time, Tova was doing the initial investment operation for disaster risk management that then, together with the Colombians, gave birth to the CAF DDO. So she was out there as one of the innovators at the forefront, recognizing the needs of the client, working with them, and then bringing the innovation to the bank. And I think that's the kind of impact that women have had in this field for some time. That impact is growing. So I got the numbers as we go. So in 2005, there were 14 disaster risk management specialists in the bank. That gives some perspective of where we've come. And 3 of them were women. That puts us at 21%. And today we have 44 fantastic disaster risk management specialists, making up 41% of all of our DRM team, which I think is great. As I mentioned, this has been a journey for me. I've always had the pleasure of being in a managerial role next to the DRM team, whether it was as a sector leader or then later on a practice manager for urban and DRM. And I've always been wowed by the DRM team in general, and also by the kinds of fantastic women you're going to hear from today. So I want you all to sit tight, enjoy your lunch as you take in what they'll share with us, both in terms of their journey and the lessons they offer. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to introduce the first batch. We're going to do this in batches of 3. I'm going to introduce the first batch of speakers. Their names are Zoe, Arti, Claudia, Sumati, joining us remotely, and Anna. And this is the first batch. You guys, let's give them a really, really, really huge welcome and round of applause. Zoe.
Hi, I'm Zoe. Fun fact about me, ever since I was a little girl, I've always loved music, especially rock and roll. I used to be a DJ at the local college radio station, and then later I bought an amp, a bass guitar, and I formed my own band. And I was thinking, there are a lot of similarities between disaster risk management and rock and roll. Both require creativity, determination, teamwork, touch of adrenaline, and you have to be kind of a rebel. You have to do things differently than have been done in the past, and you have to push the envelope. So about the time I formed my band, back in 2002, I joined the bank, the Hazard Management Unit, it was called back in the olden days. And there were about 4 technical staff. And at the time, the focus was mainly on post-disaster reconstruction. Disaster risk reduction, risk financing was more limited. And I would say that my career began in disaster risk management in earnest in 2004 after the Indian Ocean tsunami. The devastation was massive, and here at the bank, it was all hands on deck. So the bank dispatched several teams to affected countries to provide support. So first, I worked in Sri Lanka. Then I started working in Indonesia, in Aceh, on housing reconstruction and recovery. And from there, the work really snowballed. But slowly, gradually, I started working more on disaster risk reduction, mitigation, rather than only on post-disaster reconstruction. So one of my biggest achievements, I'm proud to say, 2011, I worked with a great team in the Philippines, and we prepared the first CAT DDO, $500 million outside of the Latin America region, and that project paved the way for future disaster risk management investments in the country. So, what do I hope for the future? What do I hope for my son's generation and those to come? Well, I was in Albania a couple weeks ago on a mission to discuss post-earthquake recovery support with the government, and I don't want to go on those missions anymore. I don't want any of us to go on those missions anymore. I think we should do less on PD&As, you guys agree, right? Less on emergency recovery loans and more on risk reduction, risk financing. And to do that, we need to crowd in resources, we need to work across sectors, and we need to build up our data and analytics to make our case. So, back to the rock analogy. I think we, as disaster risk management professionals, we ladies, no? We need to turn our amps up to 11, and we need to bring the rock to our clients, no? We need to help them reduce their vulnerability to disasters in the future. Thank you.
Arti Bell.
Hi, I'm Arti. One of the abiding experiences when growing up of me trying to battle through waist-high water to get to my French class. At that time, I was just one of many millions who didn't really have access to weather services. Later, I became an economist. Why did God make economists? To make weather forecasters look good. So I really understood the value of weather services when I started working in the South Asia program for weather and climate services, whether it's transport or agriculture or any of the many different sectors, and the value of information in decision making that people have in their everyday lives. I'm really honored to work with the Bangladesh project, where this really committed team is putting together agromet advisories, taking weather information, agronomic information, supporting weather advisories. And they went from 0 in 1 year to developing customized services all across the country. They were able to provide really good early warning information when Cyclone Bulbul hit, and they were able to provide this to about 110,000 farmers across the affected areas, really able to sort of give specific information that could direct them to action. This takes a lot of manpower and trained people. And I'm really happy that our project is able to grow the pool of meteorologists, helping set up the first department of meteorology in Bangladesh ever. And 60% of the student body is female. So this is fantastic stuff. We're growing the pool, and they're female. But the context is, this information is even more pertinent in Afghanistan, in FCV situations. I learned this firsthand when I hit Kabul about 2 years back. There was a severe drought ongoing, and it displaced more people because of the drought than the conflict. Think about that for a second. This is a pilot that we are working on to build community resilience through providing local planning that includes weather information. This is a low-cost station in Panjshir. And the idea is that the lessons from these pilots will flow into this large multi-GP investment that we are preparing. I know from experience that women use information, manage, and they're able to use that in every facet of their life. And as an economist who's able to who's now learned to speak meteorology, I can tell you, if I can do it, anyone can. This may be my future, but I really hope that there are lots more of us looking at all aspects of disaster risk. Thank you.
Claudia Soto.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Claudia Soto, and I'm a disaster risk management specialist in Latin America. Before coming to the bank, I worked for a multinational company. This is where I started my career. I worked on risk management and insurance. While I enjoy the work very much and the life in Europe, I didn't feel connected to my values. And I was looking for a way to contribute more to the world. So what did I do next? I quit my job and looked for opportunity to work in development. And so in 2013, I came to the World Bank, and since then, I've been part of the DRM family. The DRM family has been a great place to work. I've worked in different countries, but the experience in Haiti has really developed my passion for disaster risk management. Haiti is the only FCV country in Latin America and one of the most vulnerable countries in the world. The experience there really helped me develop my skills and my passion for DRM. It is very difficult to work in Haiti. It is an FCV country, and conditions are very hard. However, I'm very proud to communicate to you that I've helped the government of Haiti develop their DRM program. It is a very wonderful program that covers disaster risk reduction, emergency response and preparedness, disaster risk financing, vulnerability reduction in infrastructure, and hydromet services. It is a very truly wonderful program, and I really, really love it. So working in disaster risk management has not been easy, especially in an FCV environment. However, I've been very lucky to have always worked with very supportive and loving colleagues who have been always there for me to guide me and to guide me into my career. I'm very thankful for them. In the future, I would like to see more women in leadership positions in the DRM team. I've had very good examples, and I want to thank them. I always try to have more women in the teams. In January, I took my first almost all-female mission in Haiti. I'm very proud to announce that. So if I can give a recommendation to all of us, please, let's have more inclusive teams. Let's be more attentive to women's voices. I think all of your projects will benefit from that. Thank you very much.
Sumati Rajput.
How many of you have worked on anything associated with the Indian Ocean tsunami? Probably many of you. I was 16 years old when the Indian Ocean tsunami struck. With some of my classmates, I went down to southern India to work on reforestation and volunteer as needed in destitute homes and orphanages. Little did I know that this trip would change my life forever. As I was sitting with women who the tsunami had orphaned or widowed, and in some cases both, I remember realizing for the first time ever how a disaster can turn your life upside down overnight, and in the case of the tsunami, in just a matter of minutes. What I understood then was that a lot more could have been done to protect these communities from the impacts of the tsunami. What I didn't quite understand then was what exactly should be done and how can we make that happen? About 7 years ago, I attended the World Bank Group's Youth to Youth Summit, which is organized annually. I remember listening to the then president of the World Bank talking passionately about the institution's goals to invest early in preparedness to lower the impacts of disasters. About a year later, I found myself working at the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, which is the World Bank Group's policy anchor for disaster risk management. In the last 5+ years, I've tried to answer my 16-year-old self's questions. What exactly should be done, and how can we actually make that happen? In this time, I've had the opportunity to work with international policymakers, development policymakers, donors, development partners in different sectors within the bank. And what I find myself doing is often playing the role of an interpreter, because it seems we're all asking the same questions, but speaking a slightly different language or coming from a slightly different perspective. Facilitating this dialogue, converging views for collective action, is one way in which I find myself contributing to this agenda. Because it seems we all have a shared vision, one that resonates with my own vision, one where there are no destitute homes or orphanages that spring up after a disaster. And this is because people choose to live in areas that are not risk-prone, because they have the means and capacity to build houses that can withstand the risks that they're exposed to, and because they know when to leave, how to leave, and where to go when something beyond their capacity to manage happens, and because they have the financial resources to restore their livelihoods after such events. I know that this vision is a utopic one, but one that my idealistic 16-year-old self and my more pragmatic 31-year-old self continues to try to find answers for, to build. And I hope that you will join me too. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to see very familiar faces here. And I'm going to tell you the story of how I became passionate about resilience. The epicenter of my story starts in the city of Cali, where I was born. A city that was always shaking, not only because of the high seismic activity, but also because it's the capital of the salsa in Colombia. So I thought I was ready for everything. But when I was 13, living in the city of Pereira, a 6.4 earthquake affected the city. Can you imagine seeing buildings collapsing in front of your house? Then I understood the importance of the quality of construction, and I decided to become an engineer and help to reduce risk. Studying in a girls' high school in a province of Colombia, nobody believed that I should become an engineer. But I decided not to give up my dreams, and 5 years later, I graduated as the only woman in a course of 22 engineers, and became the first earthquake engineer of my faculty. But how I have used that knowledge? Helping my city. The first work I did was to lead the microzonation and vulnerability assessments of my city, contributing to building regulations and physical plannings that have changed the risk profile of the city now. Later, convening more than 22 countries and bringing them to the table for the expansion of the CRIF to Central America, bringing regional organizations, donors, to sell something that was really new. It was sovereign insurance for countries that were not aware about what was that. But now, I'm very proud of being protecting the next generations and empowering women in Africa through the Safer School programs, disaster risk management regulations, sectoral policies that we are implementing in the KDDOs in Africa. We are contributing to reduce risk from the top down. How I see the future, working across the different disaster risk management areas, in all hazards, and understanding the challenges of the communities and bringing their needs to the tables of the ministers of finance and development partners to take action to reduce risk. Many people ask me why I decided to join the bank in the middle of my career. It's because I think we have the power to bring innovation, information, policies, and fill the financing needs that are needed to create impact in risk reduction. No matter where we go, the earth will keep shaking and the climate will keep changing. I want to thank today all the women in my life, in my family, my managers, and my colleagues, because we together have demonstrated that we can reduce risks. Thank you.
Group of women. Let's give them another round of applause. It's really, really exciting to hear all of the wonderful work and the inspiring journeys that they have all followed. My name is Meski Berhane, and I'm the practice manager for urban development and disaster risk management in Africa. So listening to them actually reminds me of my own DRM journey, which started in 2010 and when I was senior urban development specialist in East Asia. And that was the first time, actually, we even became aware of the CAT DDO instrument, thanks to all the amazing work that Zoe did. And at the time, we were still trying to socialize TTLs, be they in urban or in other practices of, the value of, of resilience, of how can we really build in disaster response into our projects. So at the time, we were working a lot on tools, getting people sensitized to different ways of responding to disasters. And now when I think through our program in Africa, for instance, where we have a huge DRM program, that's where the growth is. When we think of like the CAT DDO becoming a very systematized kind of response where nearly every country wants to have one, I say that that's because of all the amazing work our women TTLs have done so far. So let's bring in another group of 4 women, Mirtha, Swarna, Margaret, and Elif, to share their journeys.
Good afternoon. My name is Mirtha Escobar. I'm a DRM specialist for the Latin American and the Caribbean region. I will take you on a trip from Kyoto to Paris to Sendai. And this has been the road that I had traveled in my professional life. I started working on ocean conservation, land conservation on the Kyoto, then moved to the landmark Paris Agreement working on forest, and then I moved to the Sendai framework. So why to land on Sendai? 2 things, climate change, and it was a time for a change. Basically, I realized that I had the opportunity to work on 2 sides of the same issue. Climate change mitigation, which I had done for 3 years, and then I could move to climate change adaptation. Plus, DRM opened a whole new infinite number of possibilities. You could work local, you could go regional, you could work in so many aspects of it. You can work with communities, you could work with the private sector. So that opened a whole new possibilities for me. Also, when I work in the bank, I just completed 10 years of service at the bank, which was commemorated with a pen, which I just received. That made me think a lot about those aha moments and those decisions that we made. When I joined the bank, one of my first mentors, she told me that you need to do often, like as often as you fiercely move on the direction of stepping out of your comfort zone, the comfort zone expands and it gives you more opportunities. So I have embraced change many times. I think that it is okay to reestablish your value. I think that it is okay to think about what do you do professionally, what do you do personally, and move on the direction of what you want to do. I enjoy working in DRM. DRM gives the opportunities to push boundaries. We just came from understanding risk, and I just want to share. So I just realized when we were briefing Ming, we were telling him about arts and magic and telling him all these things that we were doing. And it seemed like it was business as usual, but then when you start telling it to somebody else and start seeing the reactions, you see that you are, in fact, pushing the boundaries. With DRM, there is never time to be bored. There is always opportunity to work on analytics. This is always on the table. Innovation is always there. Is something that we are forced in a way to do daily because the world moves faster than you can catch up sometimes. Also, disaster risk management, although it's a lot about disaster, but it's a lot of people. It's on the name, but it's not all what you do. Communities, women groups is our first priority. We're always working and trying to find ways to work more closely with people. And also, I think that I want to take the opportunity that I have today, and I think we have done a lot, and it's because of people that walk the talk, no? And today, because all the people that we see that walk the turbo talks, no? In a way, we have seen a lot of examples and a lot of opportunities for us to move ahead. So this is a call for that. Take action, I think we can all do, and gender equality is not a woman's issue, just as a reminder.
My name is Sharna, and I'm a Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist based in the Bangladesh country office, where I joined initially in 2002. My disaster risk management story is intertwined with the story of Bangladesh. As a Bangladeshi, disaster risk management is part of our lives and identity as a nation. When flying along the coast of Bangladesh, you'll My name is Sharna, and I'm a Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist based in the Bangladesh country office, where I joined initially in 2002. My disaster risk management story is intertwined with the story of Bangladesh. As a Bangladeshi, disaster risk management is part of our lives and identity as a nation. When flying along the coast of Bangladesh, you'll see a vast, serene delta landscape, crisscrossed by rivers and contoured paddy fields. Nonetheless, this tranquility may well be the calm before a storm. The magnitude of threats faced by Bangladesh is unprecedented in terms of risk, exposure, and vulnerability. By virtue of its geography, Bangladesh is exposed to cyclones, floods, landslides, and even earthquakes, and sits in the front lines of the battle against climate change. However, despite these challenges, Bangladesh is a story of resilience. Let me tell you why. In 1970, Bangladesh was struck by a cyclone. Up to 500,000 people lost their lives. Fast forward 40 years, a similar intensity cyclone resulted in less than 4,000 lives lost. Fatalities had declined by more than 100-fold. So how did this happen? Well, over the years, the government of Bangladesh invested in resilience. They instituted disaster risk reduction policies, promoted early warning systems, and built protective infrastructure, such as these multi-purpose disaster shelters, supported by my team after Cyclone Sidr. The World Bank has been alongside Bangladesh in this journey. I lead the World Bank's Disaster Risk Management and Climate Change team in Bangladesh, where we have a program of interventions totaling over $1.2 billion. With our program, we are protecting lives, livelihoods, and assets through investments in coastal and urban resilience. In addition, emerging challenges are pushing my team beyond our usual work. In 2017, I led a bank team on the first visit to the southeast of Bangladesh, where nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees were fleeing harrowing violence and persecution. All of a sudden, I had to adapt all I had learned through my years in DRM to a completely new type of disaster, a refugee crisis. This is a story that is still unfolding. I'm leading a multi-sector project providing basic infrastructure and services to the refugees and host communities, and we're working with other actors to improve the preparedness of these people who are living in a very precarious conditions in an area where cyclones, floods, and landslides are prevalent. Working in DRM, I take this as an opportunity and privilege to provide my small contribution towards a more resilient Bangladesh and a better life for the most at-risk people in the world. Thank you.
Margaret is on WebEx. Margaret, are you connected?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Okay, am I on now?
The connection is terrible.
Yes.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I hope you can all hear me. I'm sorry not to be with you there in person. I am actively reducing your risk by staying at home with a fever, so you are welcome. My name is Margaret. I'm a senior social development specialist in the Global Social Development Unit, and I am extremely proud to say that I'm part of the origin story of disaster risk management in the bank. But I also consider myself an accidental tourist in the DRM world. I came to the bank in 1995 to work on conflict, and I did that for a few years, working on a major study on the bank's role in post-conflict reconstruction. My boss at that time was Alcira Kramer, who asked me to help her start the very first unit on disaster risk management when we finished our study. Now, my first reaction to that was seismic engineering, weather patterns. I'm good, thanks. I came here to work on issues of social justice. Then I remembered I had to pay my rent and my student loans, so I reconsidered. The two of us started the disaster management facility in 1998 with a $50,000 grant from President Wilkinson's Development Marketplace. We used that money to do a case study on Mexico and how they were managing disaster risk. And those recommendations initiated the very first bank loan on ex-ante DRM. Now, at this time, there was not a lot of expertise or even support in the bank for DRM. So we also established the Prevention Consortium in 2000, where we partner with like-minded souls from development and humanitarian institutions that knew we had to make DRM part and parcel of good development work. We worked on a number of activities that promoted mainstreaming of DRM, one of which was Global Disaster Risk Hotspots, which for the first time mapped GDP losses to hazard events. That hotspots analysis was used to launch GFDRR, and the rest is history. Now, for me personally, the most exciting part of this story was learning that disasters are a critical issue of social justice and inclusion, and addressing them through a social lens is critical. And since we're focusing on women, I have to say that one of the most gratifying experiences has been the long relationship we've developed with grassroots women's networks. We started first in the LAC region, supporting grassroots women to map their risk and facilitate dialogue with their municipal and national governments to access resources to manage risk. And over a period of more than 10 years, these relationships have grown to a point where in Central America, for example, grassroots women are recognized as risk management leaders. They're certified by the regional DRM authority and participate in policy discussions to influence DRM action. Now, that's taken some time, and it's one example, but it demonstrates where I think we need to go, recognizing the expertise of communities and working with them as partners to build on their risk management strategies that address their own priorities. But we need to do this at scale. So I'm really excited about a project I'm working now in Kenya, which is working with the National Treasury to finance local climate action, to get the money and decision-making power down to the local level where the impacts are being felt. So what would I like to see going forward? I would love to see more genuine collaboration across practices. We work in an amazing institution, but sometimes the incentives and culture we have do not support the way we need to work. My experience has taught me that affecting change is not just about technical solutions. We understand the science and know what needs to happen to manage risk, but addressing the social, cultural, behavioral, and political aspects is where we often get stuck. So we need many different perspectives and skill sets, and I hope that we can all be the activists or positive deviants we need to be, because the climate is changing much more than we humans are. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elif. It's very nice to be with all of you this noon. It was 3 a.m. In the morning on August 17, 1999. I woke up terrified, thinking this time it's real. Many people who survived the 42 seconds of shaking that night have changed, and I'm one of them. The fear, frustration, and sorrow unfolded Turkey that night had to serve something good, and I had to help this change. But before, let me give you a little bit information about the situation. I was a young engineer with a little bit of better ratios than Anna. In my civil engineering class, we were less than 10% as female students. This was a revolutionary high number for that time. But how I behaved and what I have done that night didn't reflect my hard-earned earthquake engineering degree at all. I was frozen. I wasn't able to do anything. Next morning, the picture started to become a bit clear. It was a 7.5 that hit the Marmara region in Turkey. And it took us several weeks to learn that more than 18,000 people died in the blink of an eye. I was grateful for not losing any immediate family members, and I was determined to do something. So I started to work in the crisis management center. We were working like crazy, 24-hour shifts, but we were managing the emergency response. But what did it mean back then? It was sending so many tents here, so many blankets there. It wasn't enough. We had to work beforehand. What has to be done had to be done beforehand. So the bank provided me a unique opportunity to contribute to the change in Turkey. The projects that I led or contributed included everything: reconstruction, establishing catastrophe pools, equipments, vehicles, housing, DRM systems, institutions. But among those, what I'm truly passionate about is reducing risks, creating safer cities, creating safer built environments, schools, hospitals, which would then play as a platform for behavior change in people. I was lucky enough to do this in my hometown, Istanbul. The risk reduction project we started still continues after 14 years. And the girls and boys who are studying in the safe schools with improved learning environments are also learning the correct behavior in case of disasters. Through theater plays, through games, they are practicing structural retrofitting. So that's pretty cool stuff. So I'm so happy and I feel privileged that I had the chance through the bank to follow my true north, which is risk reduction and enhancing resilience. And I'm so happy that we are creating platforms for future generations to learn correct behavior on time. Thank you. Okay. Shall I go?
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm the last one of this fantastic event today. Today we talked a lot about resilience, and we've been talking about that for years now. It's everywhere. It's in all reports, in all decision meetings, all discussion that we have. But today I would like to talk to you about the other kind of resilience, the one we have inside us, and particularly when we define what women are. You've seen and you heard a number of experience from our fantastic colleagues, and you can see that resilience is within us, it defines us, it's in our DNA, and we are hardwired for resilience. And it's not only because we have the capacity to innovate, to find solutions, to adapt to situations. It's also because we care about our family, we care about the others, and because we care, we have much more power to influence the people around us. And again, the experience that you heard today is I'm incredibly proud to be part of these communities. I entered in this field a few years ago with a number of you working on Haiti, and it's been probably the best experience of my whole life, or professional life, where I had the opportunity really to witness in the field and in reality what resilience means. Over there, at the government level, technical level, donor level, community level, women were the engine of change, of innovation. They were the ones to reach out to community. And they succeeded because they were innovative, because they were adaptive, and also because they were reaching out to support their community. That was an extremely powerful example for me, experience. And I brought back that experience, that empowerment in Africa. And not only do I bring back this experience, but also we brought back a number of staff from LAC, and we almost stole a number of them, to bring this experience and share it with the African community and develop this community that we didn't have at that time. DRM resilience was just the beginning, starting in Africa. So we brought all this good experience to build a vibrant community in Africa. I'm very proud now to tell you that on the 62% women staff I have in my unit, 70% of them are working on DRM or resilience activities. So, and this community is just growing every day because everybody wants to be part of this vibrant community. So to be short now, I will introduce 4 of those wonderful colleagues who have demonstrated tireless their commitment to make the world much more resilient. Let me introduce you to Simone, Asmita, Karina, and Alana. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Simone Bay-Lagwe, and I just need a second while she pulls up the presentation. I'm more difficult, you see. I was 8 years old when I first understood disaster risk. It was the last day of school, and I saw the sky turn green and a tornado form about a half-mile away. I remember it like it were yesterday, looking out of those plate glass windows and feeling the pull of my teacher, Mr. Smith, as he tried to grab me away from the windows and take me to the gymnasium. I knew that a half-mile away, underneath the tornado sky, that my best friend's mom and brother were there on a field trip. They were outside with other parents, teachers, and students. And yet this experience did not frighten me away from this field of disaster risk management, because I had an inspirational woman who taught me that we can save lives. This is my godmother, my Aunt Evie. She has dedicated her entire career as a social scientist to integrating the human side of things into weather warnings and forecasts. It is because of her that I am so strong in the fact that you have to understand people just as much as you need to understand risk. It's because of her that every canyon in the American West has a sign that says, in case of flood, climb to safety. She discovered that people believed that when they received the flash flood warning, that they could outdrive a flash flood. And so they got into their cars and unfortunately perished. When I think about what is my biggest accomplishment in DRM, I give you one that's obvious for those of you who know me, and that's managing the understanding risk community. I could tell you about the numbers that have grown over the years, the opportunities we've created for women, young professionals, and other underrepresented communities to share their knowledge and experiences in DRM. But the thing I'm most proud of about these events are that I know that people are strengthening or forging new relationships that take them outside of their comfort zones, take them outside of the silos that they operate in. Every UR event, I try to take a few seconds in the mayhem to look around me and see the groups of people chatting, to hear the buzz of conversation. And I'm reminded in that moment that it's not about the plenaries and technical sessions, as important as they are. It's about breaking out of our silos, learning a different perspective, including women's. And it is in these faces and in this noise that I see the future of DRM. I hope we continue to recognize the power of going outside of our networks, of strengthening these communities so that we can have a better shared experience. We can learn what the motivation, needs, beliefs, and different perspectives are in life. It's clear, and it's important to me, that we must remember to integrate our understanding of humans with our understanding of risk. And I hope next time you're at an event, you'll spend some time to reach out to a woman or someone else outside of your comfort zone. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Asmita. I'm also taking a bit of time till the slides are loaded. I hope you're all inspired while we wait. So the world's worst industrial disaster took place more than 3 decades ago in Bhopal, India, killing thousands of people and affecting many more. I was one of those affected. As a little girl growing up in Bhopal, I remember people in chaos, not knowing what to do. The images of those people are ingrained in my mind. And knowing how ineffectively the disaster was managed, I wanted to do something about it. And that started my journey on disaster risk management, working for the UN, FEMA, and eventually for the World Bank. In 2008, when I joined the bank full-time, DRM was a new field. I was working on small but very critical trust fund resources from GFDRR to make a case for DRM. I was working with newly established or non-existent DRM departments and working on small technical assistance. But the work was in silo and our impact was limited. I worked on large multi-country operations such as Horn of Africa drought response. But again, I soon realized that with the focus on sectors and response, we were not changing the DRM business in a major way. The change came when we were able to break silos and bring in more stakeholders. In Ethiopia, for example, I was able to bring in 10 sectoral teams from the bank to work with different levels of government, with 10 city governments, multiple ministries, civil society organizations, to jointly identify risk and resilience measures. And that has formed the basis of a large operation which is now benefiting more than 100 cities, improving their local emergency response as well as overall resilience. I followed a similar approach in Accra, Ghana, where after 2015 floods, was able to bring in multi-sector team from the bank to work with different levels of the government, with civil society organization, and massive communication campaign. And that led to a big change in the way the floods are managed in the city in the form of Greater Accra project. This project brings innovation in two ways, working at the river basin level, then more targeted informal settlements level. As I look at future, I realize the important role of private sector. In my current project in Sri Lanka, I'm looking into involving private sector to develop and manage green spaces, where the government is investing in flood protection infrastructure. Now, that kind of infrastructure is very important as the world becomes even more disaster prone. All of us in this room, especially women, have the power to change that more disaster impacts don't translate into higher disaster impacts. Sorry, more disaster events translate into higher disaster impacts. I continue my journey on DRM, and I hope my story has inspired many more to do so. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karima Bembi. I work as a disaster risk management specialist at the MENA unit. So my story is not as impressive as any of the stories that you just heard. I came about the disaster risk management field in architecture school, where designing for an impact meant, in a world where disasters are all over the news, that you got to think a little bit about the people that lost their homes and how you think they would recover it. So that got me thinking about what a shelter meant, how it is the place where a sense of self would be recovered, and how designing it could potentially lead to a better reconstruction of cities, a better reconstruction of communities, and of identity of self and society. So I undertook the design of various prototypes of shelters, thinking that, we design a shelter, stackable, transportable, and then the problem's going to be solved. So little did I know that the moment I started designing, I couldn't just stop there. I knew that it went beyond just the four walls and a roof. And so I thought, well, why don't I just put all the systems together in one place that could, help the populations that survive the disaster to cope. So I put, to the dismay of my advisors at the time, for the course of 2 years, I put together a sort of a floating city, and I converted an aircraft carrier. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely preposterous to think that I actually got my degree doing this. But it got me thinking that, sometimes thinking outside of the box is not that bad, Even if this is not the thing that will solve the issues that I was tackling, health issues, waste management, shelter, peace, stability, all of these big problematics helped me think a little bit about the issue at hand. So these musings and these utopian thinking aside, it helped me to think about two things. One, sometimes going back to the basics is really, really important. In the case of the city of Verona in the Dominican Republic, in a small barrio called Domingo Maiz, we're helping the community, a very poor community, try to think about how to reduce the risk of their buildings collapsing due to various this is going way too fast, by the way, for me. Going to think about how communicating, building threats to communities, to stakeholders, opens up the option of trying to find solutions that are low cost, that could be applied, for example, covering rebar, but also think about the social communication that these tools open up, but also looking forward to the future where using tools of design and architecture and construction to open up collaborative urban design that will help rebuild societies and rebuild cities could be a way to go. This is the last slide. This is a lot of you talked about Haiti and how impactful it was for a lot of everybody's careers. It was for me. I think that we need to use the resources that we have, not only financial, but also of knowledge, of thinking outside of the box, of construction, but also of finance, of economics, to give these little ones a chance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ilana Simpson. Couldn't be happier to be here today, and a real challenge going after such amazing speakers, but I'll do my best. So I grew up in a country known as the Shaky Isles, New Zealand. And as a child, I was extremely weird. I loved earthquakes. We had 2 or 3 good shakes a year, and I couldn't have been happier every time one happened. My grandparents had a very different experience because they grew up during the Napier earthquake. And that's my grandfather's school, and his sister was the sole survivor of a bank collapse on Main Street. But it never changed my view. I really thought that the reason that happened was because my grandparents grew up in the Dark Ages. And when I had an earthquake, 6.4 on my birthday, as the candles were being lit, I literally thought, I've best birthday present ever. Until my grandfather ran from the room screaming, and he had a different view than I did. In my final year of high school, in the background, Mount Doom, locally known as Mount Ruapehu in New Zealand, erupted. And again, so excited, I wanted to be on the front line, and my mother took away my car keys. I did eventually forgive her, maybe a little. But I love earth sciences. Years later, I found I wasn't the only strange person who liked disasters. Working in rural Australia, we started a tsunami project, and we asked, how do we do this work without creating fear? And the local policeman said, please create fear. The only thing people consider are cyclone parties and getting alcohol before the parties. My greatest accomplishment is our work in Romania right now. We are working on what's a wicked problem in Romania, how to move the agenda forward, create progress where there has been this perception of no progress, working on the built environment as well as with civil society. I've also been incredibly fortunate to work with many inspiring scientists, people working in civil protection and line ministries, but as you can see, they have one thing in common. There's not that many women in leadership roles in the countries we're working in. Whereas I look around and I see amazing women, and I've been privileged to work with many people across the World Bank, deeply passionate about disaster risk management, and really committed to this agenda. And so my first hope for the future is really that, the slides are not moving, but they'll catch up. My hope for the future is that we have more women clients, more women working in civil protection, in science and engineering. You are women. So that comes to my final wish for the future, and I really hope this works. Can you start the video?
And for earthquakes, you run away from the cracks, but slowly, because you'll fall through the cracks.
So that might be wildly scientifically inaccurate, but the point I love about it is my daughter's body language. She's happy, she's not frightened about earthquakes. For her, they're a fascination. And these children on International Children's Day in Romania, these girls are not afraid. And so my wish for the future is that I was right as a child, and disasters really do live in the dark ages, and we can be excited by our dynamic Earth that we live in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's very hard to follow all of these ladies, but so my name is Bernice. I'm the Global Director for Climate Change. And before that, I had the real pleasure to be the Meski of Africa for a couple of years. I did urban development and disasters management, managed a team for East Africa. And then before that, I was similar. I was managing the climate change and DRM team in the South Asia region. So over the years, I've had the pleasure of working and getting to know very many of you. But truly, just to reflect very quickly on some of the things that have already been said by some of the people before me, including Anna and Margaret, who I think are some of the people like me who remember the very early days of DRM in the bank. It's truly extraordinary to sit here through an hour of amazing expertise, passion, and resilience by so many DRM specialist women. Because I can tell you, when we started out in this field, it was a bit of an old boys network, and you know, we used to call them a little bit the DRM cowboys, and they would get on, you know, when a disaster struck somewhere, and it was difficult for women to get into that group, even if you had the passion and the knowledge and the willingness to go there. So we've come, you know, really, really very far. And again, just reflecting for myself, listening to all of you, I'm thinking you're all so much more qualified than I ever was when I, you know, handled my first DRM project. So again, just to see the progression of knowledge, of technical skills, and seeing that in the bank where we are today in DRM compared to where we were even just 10 years ago. So just my personal story, like many of you, it's Haiti. So I was innocent urban TTL, maybe not so innocent, but very urban. I didn't do anything on DRM. I was TTLing a project on urban CDD in some of the most violent neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince. So this was Martissan, Delma 32, etc., Bel Air. And it was a challenging project, obviously. And I would travel often to Haiti. Very few people wanted to work on the Haiti country program in those days because it was very challenging. It was very non-glamorous, and nobody, would give you much credit for spending a lot of time working out there, getting unsatisfactory projects back. But anyway, there was a really good, strong country team. And then in January 2010, the earthquake happened, and my neighborhoods, as I consider them, 3 out of 4. Collapsed, pancaked. I mean, they were destroyed, including all the community organizations that I worked with. So very quickly, we said, well, look, we can go and we have a CDD program there on the ground with all of these communities. They're exactly the worst affected communities. And the initial reaction was the first few days, yeah, but, we have a DRM team that's going, and then, oh, guys. And then the next thing was, yeah, but you have nowhere to sleep, and you have to sleep in a tent at the airport, because that's where, the missions were sleeping. And I said, well, I can sleep in a tent at the airport. I go camping all the time. Anyway, eventually, I got out there, and we built this program. And but it was interesting, because, again, I think it has changed. I think, the initial reaction of management in those days was like, no, we're not sending a woman out there. And I think that is really no longer the gut reaction that you'll get today. But the other thing I just wanted to say is that, and I recognize that in many of you, many of the women that I've worked with, I still work with, that I talk to regularly, is that, it is often still a matter of getting out of our comfort zones, to get there. I was, we did our initial response to the earthquake, and we helped sort of, distribute a lot of the emergency supplies to the communities that needed it the most. But then it came to, okay, what do we do next? A project. And then suddenly, my director said, well, Laura Tuck at the time, she said, well, you go and start preparing a project. We want to do a housing reconstruction program. And I was like, me? I don't know anything about this. Why should I do this? And it was really because, and I have to thank, some of these, managers I had, directors I had, role models I had, who held a mirror up to me and said, look, Bernice, you can do this. You have to get out of your comfort zone. The same thing Anna said. So get to that edge of your comfort zone. You can do it. You'll learn from it, and we trust in you. So again, I do feel that often, particularly women, not only women, sometimes men too, but often it's still as women, we tend to underestimate ourselves. We tend to take a step back and say, well, maybe I'm not quite ready for this. Maybe I don't know. Maybe this guy really knows better how to do it. Don't. Get out of your comfort zone. You can do it. And really, again, just as a personal reflection, for me, Haiti changed everything, changed me as a person. I became evangelical about prevention and about resilience, which before I'd never really given too much thought about, coming from a country like Holland, where we don't get earthquakes much. So it was not something that I should have thought of floods, but never crossed my mind. I wasn't particularly concerned about it. But it also changed my career. I think stepping up at a moment where I was told by some women in my life, Christina Malmberg, for some of them, that maybe some of you remember her, Laura Tuck, who just told me, this is it. It's your time. You're there. They know you. The client trusts you. You're doing it. And we think you're going to do a fabulous job. And it really changed me again as a person, and it changed my career trajectory as well. So just to say to all of you, get out of your comfort zones when you're being asked to. Sometimes you're not even being asked, but still get out of that comfort zone sometimes. And again, just so proud to see all of you here and to hear all these amazing stories. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the next ones. So thank you. Oh, and there's food still. For those of you who haven't had lunch yet, there's still some food, some sandwiches and drinks outside, and also time to just have an informal chat without hugging. Yes, just elbow. Yeah. All right. Thank you all.